Good evening, Star Trek Attack Wing fans. This is going to be a collective OP3 Battle of Sector 001 battle report. For this event, my fleet I'm bringing is a highly offensive-minded fleet. I'm using the Hideki fighter resources, the third wing attack ship with Gelnon for added attack damage boosted by Denatra and Cyrano Jones's tribbles. We have Denatra on a Keldon class for just high firepower in general, and the blind ship I ended up with today was the IRW Vortavor. Alright, so the initial plan for each of these rounds, since I know I'm going to be in control of the Borg first, is to run my ships close enough to get the coordinated fleet bonus and range 1 bonuses, and just pump out damage on top of the cube. My opponent in the first round is using a tactical super cube build with Picard once more onto the breach and the feedback pulse. Nothing more than that really matters. I ended up running the cube into Mike Heldon as planned, which took out her 2 shields, leaving Denatra shieldless. And after pouring all the fire into it concentrated for 1 round, managed to take it down in just that first volley and reduce it to the sphere. The opponent, what I should have done against the opponent was focus fire all of the dice on his Klingon ship, perhaps, but we ended up, his Klingon ship took out the cube and got the final hit on that, whereas while my other ships chased it down as it was trying to run away, I lost the Keldon with Denatra and eventually lost the Vortavor for a couple points for my opponent, but I did end up taking out the sphere. So, with 1 cube and 1 sphere getting divided evenly between me and my opponent, the match went to points, and since I had lost more ships than he did, it ended up being a win for him with 75 fleet points and a loss for me with just the 40. Alright, in round 2, I'm facing off against a Weiyun Veral Sung build. It's a highly defensive build. I'm going to be going with the same general tactic here. Since I finally got to see how well it worked in the first match, and since I now have a good sense of, distance and such, I decided to alter my maneuvers a little bit. What I really should have done is thrown the Vortavor in there first, so that the cube would bump into a less valuable ship, but I still repeated the same process. I used Gelnon's ability, which gave me 4 attack dice due to Denatra and Tribbles against the cube with no defense dice, so that usually ended up getting me a free battle stations token and doing a little bit of damage. You can see after the first round, it's taken almost all of its hull points worth of damage, and when my opponent has it in the second round, he continues to ram it into Denatra, which reduces her defense a little bit more, but I end up taking it out, and when the sphere appears, even though it manages to kill Denatra, which my opponent ran 12 dice into, it's still now within range 1 of me, and I have the cube token. As the sphere starts running away, the problem with the Sung appears is that since the cube is facing the opposite direction of the board, since it was moved initially towards my side, all of my ships are facing in the right direction and his ship is not. This lets me get a couple free hits on the sphere and I end up taking it out. That ends up giving me both the cube and the sphere for an extra battle point. A good match altogether. In round 3, I'm looking at another Sung build. This one actually brought the Miranda along as backup. This was kind of a last-minute build. He didn't know he couldn't use mines on the Miranda, so we ended up changing them out last minutes for the photon torpedoes. But as you can see here, it's still kind of a firepower build. He's got feedback pulse, and his Sung, I inch forward a little bit less just like last time and drag the cube in my direction, once again removing the shields from Denatra and leaving it stuck there after hitting it with Gelnon's ability. We unload on it. It's actually out of range of his blind ship, so I end up taking out the smaller Miranda class with the 12 dice attack. He ends up firing on it with the Sung, and I do a lot of damage onto it, but not enough to kill it. The next turn, you see he moves the cube in his own direction, fires on himself using his feedback pulse to do a lot of damage to it. but the dice end up not being in his favor, and he can't finish it off with his Soong when his turn comes around. So I score the points for the cube, and my opponent is now left chasing the sphere. The bad news, however, of course, is the sphere is coming in my direction, and it's going to be a chore to try to turn my ships around, especially my Keldon class. So we end up jockeying for position around the sphere, and what happens is that only 2 of my ships are going to be able to get around the rear. So I'm going to end up firing it on my rear arc with the Hideki class fighters, and even though Gilnon bumps, he still gets a little bit of damage in, but we're still racing for it. You see, we put a lot of damage on the sphere here. It does some attacks and reduces my fighters by 1, and we continue to chase after it. I managed to bump enough to keep his ship at long range, his Jaeger, but what I really should have done here is instead of transporting tribbles over to the fighters, I should have gone for just Gelnon's ability. I was afraid that the Soong would have too much of a chance to take it out, but really the ship being at range 3 and not having any modifications from actions because of the bumping would have made it more likely for me to take it out if I had just gone on with the damage anyway. But that's how it goes. I ended up taking the cube and he ended up taking the sphere, so we split the points. I ended up winning because I took out one of his ships in the process. So that is 2 wins with an extra battle point for me and my Dominion destruction fleet. And we end up taking first in the overall venue and second in the tournament. All right, this has been another battle report from me, Delta Angelfire. If you're interested, take a look at the description down below for some links to the State of the Federation, and we can discuss some of the strategies I was looking at using when putting this together. And hopefully, I will see you guys next time.